we're going to try just the rod and main bearings, just because I didn't have bluing on the one rod where you would normally think you need to resize the rod or replace the rod. And two, the crank looked absolutely phenomenal. But three is, when it had oil pressure, it was quiet and ran good and had oil pressure. This is what we're going to try. Either it works or it won't, guys. Probably won't. So this is what we're going to deal with. New rod bearing. That looks scored, but it isn't. It's smooth as could be. And this should fit in here snugly, firmly. You should have to push that in, kind of like this. Just like that. It's a kind of a firm fit. So we're going to clean the crank, top of the rod, and this with brake cleaner. Put the bearings in. We're going to lay with the plastic gauge a little bitty strip across here, and I'll show you. It'll be basically like that. And then when we tighten it up, it'll flatten out, and then we'll just measure it here on the 1 to 3,000 scale. So the different thicknesses will tell us what it is. All right, let's get started. So it'll be seated just like that. I don't put anything on the back side. You want that dry as can be. And then we'll plastic gauge it. These are the rod caps that I took off in my previous video. And for those that wondered, we're just basically loosening the rod caps right underneath here. It's how we took it off. Just tap it off. Just tap the side of it with a hammer. So I'm just going to take this insert. There's a tab there. And I'm going to get this up in here and get this seated in the rod. Like so. There we go. See if I can get a better view of it. Then I'm going to pull that rod down so we can plastic gauge it. Don't mix the rod caps up on these. Okay, with that rod insert in, on the rod part, I pulled this down. Now I'm going to put the cap on with the plastic gauge in here, and we'll see. Got our plastic gauge in there, and now we'll put it up there and snug her up. Okay, so we put the cap on. It's got the plastic gauge in. It's all dry, and we're just going to snug these up close to the torque spec, and then we'll have to remove it and see what the plastic gauge shows. So let me put the camera down and finish torquing these up. Then I'll remove it, and then we'll look at the plastic gauge. Sounds pretty simple. Okay, we torqued it up. Now we'll get this cap off of there. So what we're going to shoot for, I don't know if you can see it with the glare, is I like between 2 and 3 thousandths. Okay, so what we like is between 2 and 3 thousandths. And that right there is 2 thousandths. It's just a hair wider than that, so, but it's wider than 1.5. It's almost 2 thousandths. Almost 2. So if you go to this end, it virtually is. So it's just a hair under 2 thousandths. I'll live with that. I'll go with that. Hopefully. And of course we're going to protect all the bearings with engine assembly lube. Torque her up. And it can be just a little bit tough to get it, you know, when you're putting the rod bearings in the engine, up in there with the rod up there like that. But push the rod or the piston up, and then you go ahead and can, with 2 hands, I could get that inside there. I'll put the camera down and get it. Then you just torque them to 45 foot-pounds. I just kind of snugged them up equally. And now we're going to just go through and we're going to rotate the motor, bring the next set of rods, these back ones, down. I'll probably plastic gauge one off of that journal too, and we'll just keep inspecting and we'll keep going through the process. If I find anything that's, you know, absurd or wow, look at this, I'll bring you right back in. Other than that, I'm just going to go through the process. And boy, these front ones, they may be a little bit of a challenge with the K-frame there, but I think there's room. And in case you're wondering how I turned the crank over, I just put a 1 1/4 inch socket in here and rotate the crank until it's facing the position I want it to face. Today, just because of time, I don't want the video to get too long. Today we're just going to show you the rod bearing replacement. Even though we're going to do the rods and mains, but we're going to break that up into 2 videos. So next video will be the main replacement, replacing the main bearings, but today's the rod. I'm done with the job now, and I'll show you the rod bearings that were in here. Let's go over that way. That way. You can see the back of the engine, the bearings look the worst. The rod bearings in the back. On the back journal, the next 2 were better. Still see some brass and some scuffing. As they come forward, they look pretty much like normal wear. And when you got to the front, they probably didn't even need to be replaced. Wow, typhoon out here. I just want to say in my last video, if you haven't seen, I'll try to post a link to it. I think up in that corner. And I asked at the end of the video what you guys would do. What would you do? And the reason why I do that is because there's so many ways to do the same thing and accomplish the same results, so to speak. And a lot of people may visit this video even a year from now, and they can go through and they can read and they can get different perspectives. So I appreciate, man, there was a lot of you that had a lot of input on that, and I appreciate it. Mostly there was 2 crowds. One was, I will pull the engine out, check all your tolerances, take a perthometer and check your surface finishes and make sure your cylindricity and, you know, everything is just true on the engine. You can't argue with that. That's always correct, isn't it? And then the other portions, like oil pump, rod, main bearings, should be good to go. So, and they're not wrong either. That's not wrong. There was one remark on there that didn't give advice on that, but gave feedback to me, which I appreciate, and that was, do what you want to do, because your videos, basically, I'm not quoting it word for word, but he basically said your videos are fun when you're having fun. And I really appreciated that feedback. So all the rod bearings have been replaced, all brand new. I did plastic gauge yet another rod bearing just to see on a different journal, and it was just under 2 thousandths itself, so a little on the tight side for my comfort, but I like between 2 and 3 on a stock engine, but we'll get by with it, just a hair under 2. It'll be fine. So anyways, all the rods are in, they're all new. I didn't lift the engine up, I did it all right from the car as you see it up on the ramps. Just thought I'd show it. Next video we'll do the mains and maybe we'll see it run, hopefully. Probably doing it all for nothing. Who knows? Could be anything.